I'm Dr. Gordon Saxe, and today we're going to be talking about mind, body, and food. Ever have a gut feeling about something? Feel it in the pit of your stomach? Well, it turns out it's not just in your head. According to the emerging field of neurogastroenterology, you may perceive things with what some have described as your second brain. Yes, we may actually have two brains, the main one in our head that we all know about, and another one down below in, come on, get your head out of the gutter, in the gut. It turns out that the human brain contains about 100 billion nerve cells and, together with the spinal cord, makes up the central nervous system. What some have described as the second brain in the gut has about 100 million nerve cells. Although this is only a fraction of the size of the main brain, the gut brain, also known as the enteric nervous system, consists of neurons and nerve bundles that, like those in the central nervous system, have an extensive reach. The enteric nerve cells are embedded in sheaths of tissue lining the GI tract all the way from the top to the bottom, including, along the way, the esophagus, stomach, duodenum, and intestines. From a neurochemical perspective, the gut brain is also very similar to the head brain. In fact, nearly every chemical involved in the head brain is also located in the gut. Interestingly, the central and enteric nervous systems can operate independently of one another. Even if there's a complete severing of the primary connections between them, the spinal cord and the vagus nerve, each will continue to function on its own. Functions that reside in the brain, conscious thought, our senses of sight, hearing, touch, taste, and smell, and the generation of voluntary motor impulses would all continue on. Similarly, the gut brain would still generate peristaltic waves to help churn and mix food and move it through our GI tract, and secrete enzymes to aid digestion. The concept that the gut and brain are linked and that the gut plays a role in our intuition and feelings has deep roots in many cultures and traditional healing systems. From an evolutionary perspective, the enteric nervous system is extremely old and may even predate the central nervous system. But what is new and quite intriguing is that recent research in enteric neuroscience suggests that there was truth in this ancient perspective and that the health of the gut, which is very much affected by what and how we eat, may have a profound effect on our mind, including thoughts, emotions, and intuition, as well as on physical conditions such as obesity, gastrointestinal diseases, and neurological and psychiatric disorders, as well as autoimmune conditions and a host of other health problems. In the past, most research focused on how the brain affects the gut, by perceiving hunger, by sensing the appearance, taste, and smell of food, impacting eating behavior, and regulating blood flow and secretion. But more recently, we've come to better appreciate how the gut also impacts the brain, as well as the immune system and endocrine system. There's a huge amount of ongoing two-way communication between the brain and the gut. The main hardwire connection linking the brain and the gut is the vagus nerve, the primary visceral nerve in the body. And over 90% of the neurons making up the vagus nerve project from the gut to the brain and not the other way around. This suggests that the primary flow of information is from the gut to the brain, and that's not what you'd expect if the head brain were the commander of the gut brain. So what does food have to do with all this? At the most basic level, the gut brain senses the mechanical and chemical effects of food and relays this information, such as whether we're hungry or full, back to the head brain. But beyond that, what we eat and the health of the gut may strongly influence thoughts and emotions. While it's widely understood that the brain and psychological stress in particular can upset the gut, it's less well recognized that a poor diet and an unhealthy gut can also upset the brain. Therefore, what and how we eat and the health of our gut may have a profound effect on what happens in the brain. But before we get into the specifics of how food and the gut influence the brain, let's take a step back and look at how the brain generates stress. For many years, it's been known that when we're exposed to stressors, such as worries about finances or health, inconsiderate neighbors, aggressive drivers, and so on, they affect a part of the brain known as the hypothalamus. Under the influence of these stressors, the hypothalamus sends a signal to the pituitary gland and onto the adrenal glands. Stress hormones like epinephrine and cortisol get pumped into the bloodstream. Our hair may stand on end. We experience an increase in heart rate. Our pupils dilate and blood gets shunted from the stomach and intestines to the large muscles of our arms and legs. All of this describes what's been referred to as a fight or flight response. In other words, our bodies are getting primed to either fight the saber-toothed tiger or run away from it. This is not the time for eating or sleeping. When the stressor eventually goes away, the fight or flight response dissipates and we can relax again. The trouble is that in the modern world, sometimes it's not possible to either fight or to run away. We have to just sit there and take it from the angry boss at the peril of our job. And if these stressors in our lives have no end in sight, the stress response can become chronic and we can feel ourselves under its effects all the time. Chronic stress disturbs sleep, increases blood pressure, blood sugar, and cholesterol, and impairs the immune function. When we're under stress, we're also less likely to make wise choices about what or how to eat. We're more likely to numb ourselves by overeating comfort foods, a pint of ice cream in front of the TV. Or we may wolf down our food, neglect to savor or chew it well. We continue to eat even after we're feeling full and we don't pay attention to how we feel afterwards. Or other times when we're under stress, we may simply feel sick to the stomach and lose our appetite altogether. Stress wreaks havoc on digestion and can lead to constipation, diarrhea, bloating, malabsorption of nutrients. But there is something we can do about stress. We may not be able to eliminate all stressors from our lives. Some are simply beyond our control to change. But we can learn how to control the stress response through such things as breathing meditation, yoga, Tai Chi, and other mindful forms of exercise. And through these, we can train our brains and bodies to respond to external stressors without generating a full-blown stress response. We can actually learn how to reprogram our physiology and cultivate calmness and mindfulness. So now let's get back to the question of how food and the health of the gut influence the brain. We all know that certain nutrients in food are important for brain health. It turns out, for example, that high levels of several vitamins, B, C, D, and E, as well as omega-3 fats and carotenoids such as beta-carotene and lutein, found in abundance in whole food plant-based diets, have been able to better predict cognitive abilities and less shrinkage of brain matter that normally occurs as part of the aging process. Specific amino acids that are taken in as a part of a healthy diet provides critical building blocks for neurotransmitters such as acetylcholine, serotonin, and dopamine, important in brain function. Conversely, the standard American diet, high in refined carbohydrates, animal products, and saturated and trans fats, reduces circulation not only to the heart, but also to the brain, resulting in impaired memory and cognition, increased risk of stroke, and a greater likelihood of neurologic diseases such as Alzheimer's. And the health of the gut itself is important for brain health. Cracks, fissures, outpouchings, and inflammation of the intestinal lining can perturb the underlying nerve cells of the enteric nervous system and convey, by the hardwire connection of the vagus nerve, a less than healthy signal to the brain. Changes in intestinal function, such as constipation, get conveyed to the brain in a similar manner and may account for the depression and other emotional changes often observed in those with bowel disorders. One particularly intriguing An important aspect of gut health that may strongly affect the brain has to do with the microbiota, the bacterial, viral, protozoan, and other life forms that constitute the gastrointestinal flora. Under normal conditions, a healthy gut is home to a variety of such life forms. These normal or commensal organisms are essential to us, and we could not survive without them. They provide ecological support to our immune system. They occupy niches within the GI tract that might otherwise be filled by pathogenic organisms. They produce important nutrients for us, such as vitamin K and biotin. And they help to convert others, such as genistein from soy, to a form that's biologically available. So where do these good microbes that do all these wonderful things for us come from? After birth, they come primarily from the fermented foods in our diet. In fact, if you look at any of the traditional cuisines around the world, you see that they incorporated one or more of the naturally fermented foods, such things as sauerkraut, pickles, yogurt, sourdough bread, red wine, kimchi, and so on. In my view, one of the healthiest of these is miso, a mildly salty fermented soybean paste that's used in miso soup. Miso is teeming with active cultures, not only lactobacillus and bifidus, the same ones as in yogurt, but many more as well. And miso also contains a compound, zibecolin, that helps to detoxify certain industrial toxins. Certain things may harm or change the balance of the intestinal flora. For example, when we take in certain antibiotics, they kill bacteria, but they can do this indiscriminately. Antibiotics can be a very good thing, but they can also kill off the good bacteria, leaving the intestines vulnerable to overgrowth by dangerous pathogenic ones. This means we need to use antibiotics judiciously. For this and other reasons, we also suggest avoiding the use of factory-farmed animal products, as many of these animals are routinely fed antibiotics just to prevent them from getting sick from the unhealthy, crowded conditions in the cages they live in. The trouble is that when we eat them, we may also take in some of the antibiotics that they've been fed. This can contribute not only to antibiotic resistance, but to damage to our intestinal flora. Another compelling reason to avoid animal products in the diet comes from studies that reveal the difference between the microbiota profiles of people who eat vegetarian plant-based diets versus people who eat high meat diets. Gut bacteria associated with high meat diets have been shown to be pro-inflammatory and may predispose the body to many chronic disease states, not only the typical ones we think of, heart disease, diabetes, cancer, but also to neurological and psychological ones like depression. When there's an imbalance in the intestinal flora, a hardwired message is sent by the gut that conveys information about the situation to the brain. It's been shown, for example, that when the balance is off, a message is sent by the gut to the brain telling it to turn off the gene that codes for the production of the neurotransmitter GABA, which in turn leads to lower levels of GABA within the brain. Now this is important because one of the functions of GABA is to serve as a natural painkiller. Some researchers think that people suffering from various types of pain syndromes, such as fibromyalgia, may not have enough GABA, and insufficient GABA may also play a role in the psychic equivalent of pain, which is depression, as well as in anxiety. So cultivating a healthy gut and ensuring a healthy balance in the intestinal flora may be important for preventing or for treating pain, psychological disorders such as depression and anxiety, and other neurologic conditions. But let's take this a step further. What if we were to combine a healthy diet with reduction of controllable stressors in the environment along with a daily practice of stress reduction? In a sense, we'd be working the problem from both ends, from underneath and from above. In a sense, what we'd be doing is improving the quality of everything that comes into us from our environment, whether it be the physical food we eat, the water we drink, the air we breathe, the sounds and the sights, the smells we ingest, the thoughts and emotions of others that we take in. we'd be replacing that which is toxic or poor quality food, car alarms, hateful emotions, with that which nourishes us, healing food, fresh air, beautiful vistas, loving energy. Imagine what that would do for the health of both of our brains and the body as a whole. And it's within our grasp. At least that's what my gut tells me.